Some would say we never become fully actualized until we heal the emotional and psychological traumas of our past.
They would be wrong. In an effort to heal the psychological and emotional traumas of past, you have to focus there. And as you focus upon those psychological and emotional traumas of your past, you activate the vibration of them. And since life has caused you to go so much further, you just use that as your current excuse not to keep up with who you are. And you can cause an indefinite rift. That is not to say that those traumas didn't cause expansion. But now the work is to do your best to turn yourself in the direction of the expansion and stop trying to explain how the expansion came about. Here's the best way to hear that. This conversation about the vortex makes it easier to explain everything. Do you like it? So, can you hear us when we say the problem is always outside the vortex? The solution is always inside the vortex, and they're very different frequencies. So if a person is asking the question, addressing the problem over and over and over and over, then they're holding themselves in a chronic state outside of the solution, you see. However, if you do that long enough, for every moment that you hold yourself outside the vortex, experiencing the trauma or the struggle or the problem, you're launching more rockets. And as you launch more rockets of desire, the larger part of you is expanding. So this calling gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And so it is possible to ask and ask and ask and ask and ask and ask and ask from outside the vortex until you've got a really strong calling. And then it is possible to distract yourself for a moment from the problem, and the vortex will take you in. In other words, picture this vortex. So here it is spinning. There's a powerful attraction going on. Everything that you are and everything that you desire, everything that you have become is there. And you're in despair, nowhere near it. Well, the solutions are there, but you can't find them. The answers are there, but you can't find them. What you want is in there, but you can't see it. The path isn't clear for you at all. Let's say you're in revenge. You're a little closer, but you still can't see it. Let's say you're in anger and less anger. You're closer, but you still can't see it. Let's say you're distracted. You're petting your cat, or you're having a massage, or you're at a ball game. You're doing something where you're not keeping all of that activated. So you're in a place of satisfaction or joy about, it doesn't matter what. You've just, for this moment, deactivated that thing that's keeping you away. Now the vortex can take you. So the vortex takes you in, and it's unfamiliar to you. You have a sort of feeling of elation. You feel a little disoriented because you're not used to being in there, but something wonderful happens, and now you feel a little more hopeful than you did before. Well, if you're hanging around in the vicinity of hope, the vortex will take you in often. And once the vortex takes you in and shows you the solutions, gives you the insight, rendezvous you with the things you want, pretty soon you start believing, you see. But a regimen of going back to try to explain the problems of the past hold you there every time, no exception. We're stubborn about that.
I totally agree with you. But some would say
they too would be wrong.
That these incidents or these perceived incidents from our past sort of limit our potential. And we can't...
When the truth of it is, well, they do, if you say it again, some would say that these perceived problems limit potential, but the only reason that they do is because you're still perceiving them. You're still keeping them active in your vibration. So these some that you are saying would say that by going back and looking at them and resolving them, you could leave them in a different place. Well, that's an entirely different situation. In other words, here's the thing. Let's be fair to this whole discussion. You are where you are. That's profound, isn't it? I am where I am. I've got these habits of thought, and because I've got these habits of thought, I've got this chronic vibration going on. So law of attraction's bringing me this life. What's manifesting in my life is an indicator of how I'm vibrating. You just can't get around that. And if how I'm living is different than what I want, then there is this gap between who I really am and who I'm letting myself be. So if your intention is to, from where you are, which is the only place you can be, to reach for the best feeling thoughts you can find, what happens is, little by little, you find yourself more and more in the direction of, and eventually inside the vortex. Jerry tells a story where he couldn't bear the idea of eating green beans. And when someone offered them to him, he always said, "No, thank you. I eat about anything, but not that," he said. And one day, after refusing the best looking green beans ever, grandmother had grown them in her garden. She had carefully cut them and prepared them, and there they were on the table. And grandfather could not believe that this ridiculous boy, a man really, was going to refuse the best green beans in the whole world. And Jerry said, "I just don't like them." And he said, "Do you know why?" Jerry said, "No." He said, "When you were a baby, your mother read an article that green beans were good for you. So you had green beans for breakfast, and green beans for lunch, and green beans for dinner, and green beans for breakfast, and green beans for lunch, and green beans for dinner. We all thought you would be green. Green beans, green beans, green beans." And when Jerry heard that, he said, "Oh, well, let me try some green beans." So there was a resolution from that past. Is that what you're getting at?
In a way.
Well, that's as far as we'll go with that. Because, in other words, in your now, look at it this way. Do you accept that there are two vibrational aspects to you and to everyone who is physically focused? So, and do you accept that the larger part of you has expanded into places that the rest of you hasn't quite caught up with? And do you acknowledge that the better you feel, the more in alignment you are with that broader part of you? And so anything that you do that brings a feeling of relief and closes that gap, anything that you do is beneficial. And there are a lot of tools and techniques and processes that different people use along the way. There are techniques that a person who is in chronic despair, there are techniques that can help a person in chronic despair that would be ridiculous for someone who's just hanging around in frustration or overwhelmment. It really depends upon where you are on the emotional scale. And so it really isn't fair for us to throw anybody's techniques all in one basket and say, not a good technique. It's just that as we understand the laws of the universe as we do, and as we know who you really are and where you really are, we're just saying there are much easier ways of going about releasing resistance than going back and chewing over all of that stuff. And that's what we meant earlier when we said there are so many people outside the vortex having debates about how to fix things, and in the process of being outside the vortex, they are denying their true power and wondering why everything's taking so long and going so slow. That's really the point that we want to make. So now bring us back around to where you are.
Okay, so my question is really in your ability to take yourself to the vortex.
Yes.
If you've had a trauma from your past that affects your self-worth or your positive outlook in life, does that not handicap your ability to go to that vortex?
Yes, it would. But here's the thing, and this is a wonderful conversation that you're stirring up here. So let's say something happened long, long ago, and it wouldn't be affecting you now if you didn't continue to replay it. But let's say you do sort of continue to replay it. So you kept that resentment, or you kept that trauma, or you kept that injustice active in your vibration. Well, the fact that you kept it active in your vibration means that now you've moved through time, you're still attracting new current stuff around that vibration. So you don't have to go back and deal with that old past trauma. It would be enough to deal with the one you attracted just now. But let's say you don't do that. So you move through more time. Now you've got this compiling of traumas because you kept something active in your vibrations and then you attracted more. We say, if you don't deal with it and clean it up, don't worry. It will get bigger. So the point that we're making is that it's ever so much more productive. Our friend today that we sat and did the focus wheel, there would be no benefit in going back into his past and trying to figure out how he attracted that friend, or why that friend is rendezvousing with him on the points that he was. It's enough that the friend had that experience. We can talk about what happened yesterday and clean up the vibration. You see? So, you don't have an experience when you're 2 or 3 or wherever back there. You don't have an experience, and from the experience, embed the vibration of it into your countenance. until later on you have some kind of surgery or some kind of intervention that weeds it out. It isn't like that at all, because your brain is not a storage cabinet where you store vibration. You are a transmitting and receiving mechanism. So all that happened was back there when that happened, you had an experience that you thought about enough that you trained a vibration into that place. And then law of attraction cooperated with you. You felt that way, so you got more. And you felt that way, so you got more. And you felt that way, and you got more. And you felt that way, and you got more. And you got more today. And what we're saying is, you only got to deal with what happened today. Because what happened today happened in response to an active vibration. What happened today happened because today, doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, you've got a vibration going on and a relationship with that vibration. All you got to deal with is where you are now in relationship with where you want to be. And anytime you look back, you hold yourself.
Even
back.
When you look back with the intent of healing that?
The intent for improvement is current in your now. Looking back, you have less detail, you have less memory, you have more habits of thought surrounding it. You're more embedded in the thought. In other words, it would be 100 times harder for us to do a focus wheel with the man that we did with today if we were dealing with his past than it was if we were dealing with something that's active in his now. In other words, a lot of the stuff, as you listen to one another, have you ever had a conversation with someone whose family, and you're kind of off your game on some subject, and you're trying to get to the bottom of it, and all of a sudden they're talking about things that you did to them when you were 5, and you don't even remember the incident? In other words, going back into those, it's just so much easier to... So these are the premises that we've got to ask you if we have conveyed to you in a way that you get it. Do you accept that there is a vortex that is the culmination of all that you have become? Yes, we're answering for you. And do you accept?
Yes.
Do you accept that you have a habit of thought that is playing against that? In other words, the only relationship that you need to deal with is the habit of vibration that you got going on now and who you really are. Here's another way of saying it. You'll hear it this time. A man complained to us one day that he had amassed a huge fortune, a veritable empire, and tides had turned and he had lost his fortune. And he was in his 60s and he was devastated because he thought that he had worked his whole life to reach this pinnacle of success, and now he could no way see how he could turn it around in what seemed like the short amount of time that he had left. Another story, we'll wrap them up together here in a minute. A woman had been an artist for many years. She lived in New York. She traveled to California. She wanted to show her portfolio to the people at Hollywood. She thought she could do some art for them. And in the process of traveling across the country, someone broke into her car and stole her portfolio. So she had nothing to show. So she could not see how she could possibly get a job now, since all of her evidence of her talent was gone. And we said to both of them, your lost portfolio or your lost fortune matters not at all, because what's in your vibrational escrow is what your life has caused you to be. There is a vibrational portfolio, a vibrational resonance, a vibrational you, that all you've got to do is find a way of accessing, you see. You don't have to go back and relive all of that made you that. You are that. You didn't slip back from that. So now that's the positive version of the story that we're talking about with you, which is a more negative version. So, but the point that we're making is, as you have an experience and you continue to speak about it, you carry it forward in your current vibration. And then because it's active in your vibration, more things like it happen, and you carry that forward into your current vibration. So all you ever need to, or all you ever can deal with, is your current vibration. You cannot go back and change a vibration in the past, because all of your power is in your now. And what now is, the reason that now is now, its whole power and potential, the nowness of now, what it is where you meet you. Is where the vibration of your current offering and the vibration of who you really are meet, and your emotions tell you how the meeting's doing, you see.